Good evening, cheeseheads. If anyone's watching this, which right now it says no, zero, there's no one watching us, HG, so you can do what you like. Because of the media blackout, we have not trailered this, but we are still producing content as normal. So, welcome to our YouTube channel this evening. Tonight, I'm joined by our resident analyst, the Hollow Globetrotter. How are you this evening, HG?
I'm doing very well. Resident analyst. I'm not sure if I like that or not, but yeah, I'm all right. It's been a nice day here, 20 degrees. Sat out on my balcony having dinner with my wife and my daughter. It's a relaxing Saturday. Everything's closed here today, so just because there's a holiday.
Hmm.
Uh,
So we've got
yeah,
bank
so like
holiday this weekend as well.
it's for the same reason, but whereas it's always here on the 1st of May,
Hmm.
so that just means that all the shops are shut on a Saturday. I
Okay.
mean, obviously, it's weird, but with lockdown and stuff, most weren't open anyway. But all the supermarkets and everything closed today, all the essential ones as well. So it's been nice
Wow.
to just chill at home and spend time with my family.
Sounds lovely to me. Sounds lovely. I've got a beverage this evening. It's a spritzer.
Ooh,
So yeah, I had a few beers. Got home from work, had a few beers. Now I'm on the gin. I'm happy.
okay.
Bank holiday weekend. What could go wrong? Only another Spurs defeat, but we'll get to that later. Um, so we're here tonight, HG, to talk about who is going to be the next boss of Spurs. What have you made for the search for a manager so far, without mentioning names? What do you think of the way the club's conducted
I mean, we've talked before about how I wouldn't have sacked Mourinho before the cup final, but I would have sacked him. So now the cup final, on, I mean, he's gone as well. But I just feel as if I think the club has been fine. I mean, they came out and said what was going to happen. They said that Mason's going to have the job until the end of the season. So I think that meant that we were going to have 3-4 weeks of time to end the. It's been a bit crazy how the press and how the fans, a lot of the fans have decided that it's not happening quick enough. But I think that Spurs. I mean, I don't want to say to their credit because I
this?
don't really agree with what's happened, but still, I think Spurs have been pretty upfront and okay with what they think or how they want to go about this. So I'm not too disappointed in Spurs when it comes to the search so far. Anyway,
Are you surprised that he didn't have anyone lined up ready to go? I mean, I've got to admit, like last time round, you know where I was with Pochettino, and I was very much like Jose, and he was the obvious choice because he's an unemployed world class manager in theory, and it happened, but it was quite clear that he was very much lined up. So it was like Poch out one day, Jose in the next day. The coup is complete. This time round, there is literally no coup, and they've left the caretaker manager in the hands of like someone who's still playing Call of Duty on his PS5. Have they not, HG? So are you not surprised they had someone lined up at least?
no, because the way I see it, it's very similar to the year when we sacked AVB. Like I realize it's much closer to the end of the season now, but yeah, like when AVB went, it was the middle of December. We didn't have anyone lined up. I don't feel as if it was a decision that maybe Spurs wanted to make. I think it was a mutual thing by the end of it. And so
Mm.
Sherwood got the job, and it ended up being that Sherwood kept the job for the rest of the season. I don't know if Levy intended that. I don't think he did, but that's what happened. And I think this has really been no different. For the last 5 games of the season, it would have been very difficult to bring someone in long term unless they obviously were already out of a job. And I think that that's not really where Spurs wanted to go. I think they're thinking of next season and beyond, and so it gives them
Mm.
in a 4 week head start to find someone new. But I wasn't too surprised. I know that Levy has done it before. Like when he sacked Martin Jol, Ramos was basically there already, and when he sacked Pochettino, it was the same with Mourinho. I just think this is different because it was towards the end of the season, and I didn't expect anyone to be announced in the next day or two after the sacking. Like yeah, to me, he's got until the end of May. If it goes into June, then there's a problem. But at the end of the season is what the club have said. I've read that they would like to have someone in place by the end of the season, and I personally think they're just waiting for the leagues around Europe to finish before they can really start talking with people and deciding where they want to go. And I don't see anything wrong with that.
Mm. Your camera's a bit delayed, actually, HG. I'm just going. Is it all right if you just disconnect and come back? Is that all right?
Yeah, no worries.
So while we're waiting for him, I'm just going to go through the bookies odds for the next Spurs manager. So currently, and I've just looked this up on Sky Bet. So God help us, Brendan Rodgers, too many gins caller, is at 3-1. Ralph Ragnick is at 4-1. Hi HG, welcome back. I'm just going through the odds on Sky Bet. Scott Parker is 4-1. He's closed in a little bit today. I noticed there's a lot more talk around the rich man's Harry Winks. Nuno Nuno is at 7-1 from Wolves. Eric Ten Hag, God knows how, he's now up to 8-1. I mean, he's still like the fifth favourite, and he's just signed a year extension. I don't quite know what planet we're operating on there. Graham Potter's at 10-1. And then we go to a load of people that kind of are the sublime and ridiculous. Klinsmann 16-1, Sari 16-1, and Ryan Mason 16-1. So, if I said to you the first question I've got for you, HG, do you honestly think we will go for a director of football and a manager in our next setup? That's my first question. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I don't think we will. I think we should, but I don't think we will, because I think that Levy doesn't see Steve Hitchen as a problem.
Yeah.
And so there's no position to be filled when it comes to director of football or technical director or whatever Hitchen's job title is. I think it might be technical performance director.
Yeah.
I don't think Levy sees an issue there. So it will be a manager only, I think, is where that's what I expect from Levy.
Okay. Let's go through some of the people on this list then. So Brendan Rodgers 3-1, otherwise described. I mean, outside of me, your nemesis, HG. Brendan, you wouldn't be happy if Brendan took over, no?
No, it wouldn't be my choice. I mean, as I've said plenty of times on podcasts and videos, like Brendan Rodgers to me is still a bit overrated. I know he's done okay at Leicester, but I think he's done it with players that were there before he joined. I don't know if I trust him when it comes to buying new players. So there's an issue. I mean,
The
I
only
just think
thing,
that
just to caveat that, the only thing I'd say about that is I don't know how much he would actually have about signing players anyway, given that Daniel Levy seems to pull most of the strings on that front and Steve Hitchen. So, I'm sure he would have some sort of input like, I need a midfielder or whatever, but, he'd end up getting whoever they sign. So that might not be such a big deal.
I just think with Brendan Rodgers is that when you look at his career so far, he's never really started something, right? He's always built on something that was already started. So where it was when he was at Swansea, Roberto Martinez was there before him, and he built on it, but the foundations were already there. And then he went to Liverpool. They already had Luis Suarez. They already had Raheem Sterling. He did sign Sturridge, to his credit. I'll give him that. But most of that team that got them almost to the league, were already there. And then with the money that they got from selling Suarez, he wasted a ton of it, and he lost his job. He went to Celtic and rebuilt the reputation. But again, at Leicester, as much as things went south after Ranieri got sacked, and they, I think it was Craig Shakespeare before it went to Claude Puel, but a lot of the young players that were signed that are the massive part of this Leicester team, which are really good, were there before he got there. And he's just kind of kept the same system. He's not really changed much. I just don't know how much is really down to him. And so I'm nervous. And I mean, that's taking away the things that he said publicly, which make me just want to run away from him completely, because I feel like he's an image manager, and I don't really want someone like that. I think we had that with Mourinho.
A real
I
life
think we
David
want,
Brent.
kind of, yeah, and nothing's really changed from that. Like, obviously, as time's gone on, he's doing well in the Premier League. You can't deny that, but he's not the type of manager I would want at Spurs. I mean, that's just the way it is. I don't want someone like that.
Well, I like this comment from Nick Dornan, which says, HG would rather Brendan McGurty than Brendan Rodgers, I suspect. Is that true?
Yes, because usually when Brendan goes on Premier League TV, or whether it's called Fan Zone, he gets advice from me first. So I would like to see, maybe I'd have a bit more say on what was going on at Spurs if Brendan was in charge. But it's like Brendan Rodgers would not be a bad option. I have to say that he would not be a bad choice. And I think it's probably clear that he would be Levy's first choice if Levy could really pick whoever he wanted. But that doesn't mean that I would want him. I don't want him.
Okay. Well, moving down. So Ralph Ragnick, which now literally the caller knows very little about European football. He's the first to admit it. He's kind of a one club kind of guy. He's not promiscuous with his football viewing at all. So I'm glad that HG is on with me tonight and not Brendan or Franco, because I know they're very similar ilk to me. And I've got someone who actually knows a little bit about the guy who sounds like he's off the Avengers, Ralph Ragnarok, as I'm going to call him from now on. HG, Ralph Ragnick, I know we were talking pre-show, so he's got history. Am I right in saying he's sort of been a bit of a bridge in the Red Bull world of sports? So Leipzig and Salzburg, and sort of tried to progress them on and off the pitch?
Yeah, I mean that's it. Obviously, he had a career before he went to Leipzig, but I think most people now know him because of what happened there. He worked for the Red Bull empire, for the entire football empire that they have. There's two teams in Austria. Obviously, they've got Leipzig in Germany. There's one in Brazil, one in America, and he was kind of the director of football for everything for a long time. I think from 2012 to last summer, 2020, he was there. And during that period, he did work as the manager for RB Leipzig for a couple of seasons. One season, he got Leipzig promoted into the German Bundesliga because the coaches they'd had previously weren't able to do it. And you have to think at that level, Leipzig really did have a financial advantage. It was a shock that they didn't make it for the 1 or 2 seasons they had in that division before they went up. And Ragnick took over and got them up into the Bundesliga. And as soon as he did that, they got another manager in. The only other occasion he was manager there was, again, kind of similar. He stepped in because at that time, the manager who was Hasenhüttl, the guy now at Southampton, Hasenhüttl didn't want to be a manager just so they could then take Nagelsmann the following year. So he quit. And so for 1 year before Nagelsmann had agreed to join, they needed a manager, and Rangnick stepped in for that season too. But he's not just RB. Like as I said, he did have a career before that. He took Schalke to the semi-finals of the Champions League. He was at Hoffenheim. Hoffenheim were like the original Leipzig. He took them up from the second division in Germany under the money that they had under Dietmar Hopp, who's the owner of Hoffenheim, a very small team. He took them up too. So he has had success at various levels in German football, but yeah, he obviously hasn't worked outside of Germany, which may be a problem for some. But I don't know how much I would know if I lived in England, but because I don't, I see his name quite a lot. He's on TV a fair bit. And yeah, like the whole Red Bull project was dependent on Leipzig getting into the Bundesliga. That was the big thing for them, because it gave them, a club at the highest level, right? Which is what they wanted. And so as soon as he managed that for them, as we all know, with Leipzig, they got to the semi-finals of the Champions League last year, second in the league this year. He's got them to where they could. And as much as lots of people hate Leipzig for the way they've kind of navigated past the German 50+1 model, you have to give them credit for what they've done with the money they have. They haven't really wasted much, and if they have spent it badly, they've moved on very quickly from those players. So Rangnick's track record is not a bad one. It really isn't.
And has he been like a director of football then, HG, who's sort of bobbed in and out of management during his time there?
Yeah, I mean, that's just it. So like the whole setup that they have pretty much now has been set up by him. So he was the one who employed Paul Mitchell when Paul Mitchell left Spurs. He went to Leipzig. That was Ragnick's decision. So like everything to do with like that. Again, Red Bull is not just about like the teams that they get players to move up through the clubs to make it to the top. It's all about coaches too. They have a set way of playing, and Red Bull Salzburg play the same way as Red Bull Leipzig, and the coaches follow the kind of the system that Ragnick wants to play. He's very much a system guy. He likes to have a high press. He likes to attack as much as he can, and he wants the ball as quickly as possible. So that to me, he is the main architect. We can talk about the money behind Red Bull, which obviously has played a part, but we've seen plenty of times in football that money doesn't guarantee success. And although Leipzig haven't done anything yet, they are a very successful German side. They qualify for the Champions League. They made the German Cup final last night, so they'll be in the final against Dortmund in a couple
Mm,
of weeks.
mm.
They are going places, and as much as they are selling some of their best players quite regularly now, they have a system in place to replace them. So I think the system works very well.
It's an interesting one. They've got something similar in F1, believe it or not. They've got two teams in F1. And this is the way Red Bull seem to sort of do business. They have a guy, Helmut Marko is the guy over who is an old, very old now, 78, Austrian racing driver, and he sort of oversees their racing development across two teams. So not just one, but two, and bringing drivers through and advising the sort of the guy who's in charge, Christian Horner, who's Jerry Halliwell's partner, who's in
Mhm.
charge of the Red Bull racing team, and likewise in what was Toro Rosso. So they've got a finger in. Maybe they've sort of follow that structure and have sort of that advisory role or director of football role or director of racing, whatever you want to describe it as. It's certainly an interesting one, and everything I hear about Ralph Ragnarok, as I'm going to call him, sounds quite promising, really. So I'm not too
Yeah,
disappointed.
I think if there's one red flag, right, it would be that when he left Schalke, he left citing burnout, like stress. It was just too much for him. And I mean, like, granted, this is 10 years ago, and mental health was seen as being different then. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think a lot of people kind of held that against him for a while, and like, I mean, he has been kind of in the background. There's no way of denying it. There's a reason why a lot of Spurs fans don't know who he is,
Hmm.
because he's coached a team for 2 years out of the last 10. He's not on the touchline much, and so if he went to Spurs to be that kind of touchline manager, then yeah, you feel as if it might be some kind of risk. But I have to say clearly that the way that those teams play is completely based on how he wants things to be done. He picks coaches based on that. He trains coaches based on that. We talked about players having gone through the system. The people that I commentated on when I started here commentating for Red Bull Salzburg, Sadio Mane was in the side, right? And Sadio Mane was one of their better players, wasn't their best player at the time, but he got a big move. And because Leipzig weren't in that top division at the time, he went to Southampton first. Like, at that point, Red Bull Salzburg was almost at the peak of the pyramid. Now, pretty much anyone who's good at Salzburg moves on to Leipzig.
Where
The
are
only one that
Salzburg now? HG. What league are they in, and where are
Well,
they?
Salzburg is the Austrian Premier Division, so I mean they are the money team here in Austria.
Mhm.
They're actually playing the cup final right now against Lask. They've won the double maybe the last 6-7 years, if not longer. I mean, they are the team here, but their team changes every season. If they get a good player in, I mean, let's take. I think the perfect example of their system is there's a Hungarian midfielder called Dominik Soboslai, right? Dominik Soboslai, obviously Hungary borders Austria. He went to Red Bull Salzburg as a 15-year-old, 16-year-old, and started in their system and played for Salzburg's feeder club, which is called Liefering, which is just outside Salzburg. And so you can almost look at Salzburg, you almost look at Liefering, and if there's any good 17-year-olds that are playing regularly for them, you know that they are considered to be the next big thing. If
Yeah.
they do well at Liefering, they get the move to Salzburg. Salzburg team has maybe two or three experienced players, but a lot of them are young. They're 21, 22 max. You don't often get many players older than that. And again, if they're good enough at Salzburg, then they will all move up to the next level. So Soboslai was in the Salzburg first team for maybe 2 seasons, 2.5 seasons. Then he got the call in January that Leipzig wanted him, and he went to Leipzig. And they do kind of have a conveyor belt system. There are obviously some players like Erling Haaland that came in to Salzburg and then left to go somewhere else. So there's no guarantee that they'll move on, but players, especially now, players realize that there is a progression for them, and they can go up through the leagues and they can get
Yeah.
regular football. Liefering is the Austrian second division. You do well there, you go to the first division. You do well there, you get to play European football every season, guaranteed. You do well there, you might get a move to somewhere else in Europe. But if you're one of the best ones, there's a very good chance you'll go to Leipzig and play for a top team in Germany. And so when you've got players who are doing that at 22, 23, 24, Naby Keita is another perfect
Mm,
example. Spent two
good
years at
price.
Leipzig. Liverpool bought him. So it's good for Leipzig. It's good for the Red Bull brand. There's no doubt about it. But for players especially, it works.
Hmm.
And Ragnick was the architect of that system.
I mean,
He's
that's
the one who made it
interesting.
work.
Well, we want him then, don't we? Where do we sign?
Well, this is it. Like as a director of football, then yes, I would want him absolutely. Um, I look Spurs want a similar system because I think that the rules are just different. But Red Bull Leipzig, Red Bull Salzburg, they pick the best youth players. Upamecano started at Salzburg, but they signed him from France. Sadio Mane is the same. Half the Leipzig team was signed from somewhere else, like Mukiele was in France. Konate, they buy a lot of players from other countries very young, and they give them a chance.
Hmm.
Some of them come from the PSG like reserves, and they go to Leipzig and they're playing most games. It's the level of scouting there is fantastic, and if we can get that, then great.
Hmm.
But yeah, Rangnick as the director of football would be a perfect solution. It's just that, as I said before, I'm not sure Levy wants to give Rangnick that
Hmm.
level of control because, like,
He
he is a
likes
bit
the
of a
control
control freak.
himself. He's a control freak.
Yeah,
Absolutely, he is. A comment here from Rainer Bless. If it's going to be a German, Spurs should pick Ragnick over Klinsmann. Well, we've talked about Ragnarok enough now. Um, let's move to Klinsmann. He's 16-1. He's obviously been the German national team manager at some point. I'm pretty sure. I didn't dream that. Where else has he been, HG? I'm sure he's been around a few teams, but I can't recall. Has he been at Munich?
yeah, he was at Bayern for a bit. I think after he was the manager of the German team at the 2006 World
Yeah.
Cup that was held in Germany. He went to Bayern for a bit after that, flamed out very quickly, didn't get on with the bosses. And as we all know with Klinsmann, I mean, he's got an American wife. He lives in California. He likes that. And outside of that stint at Bayern Munich, he came back to German football about 18 months ago and became the manager at Hertha Berlin. Hertha also have got a serious investor. They were throwing money at the problem. They brought Klinsmann in to kind of change things around, and within about a month and a half, he was gone. So that like I know that when he was manager of the American national team, that Father Nick doesn't rate Klinsmann, doesn't want Klinsmann, thinks he's rubbish. And so I think there's enough as good as the job he did for the German team, because that 2006 Germany side were unlucky to not win the World Cup that
Yeah,
year.
agreed.
And he did change the German system around completely and probably gave them the footing they needed to then go and win the World Cup themselves 8 years later. I don't see it. The only thing linking Klinsmann with Spurs is that he played for them. I just don't. That there would be no other reason to bring Klinsmann in at all, because things have moved on since 2004 when he was given the German job, and I don't know if he's moved with them.
I mean, he's a legend, to be honest.
Yes, and he always will be a Spurs legend. But I think like if we took that out, we don't really want to go the Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and the Mikel Arteta route of like picking club legends
Definitely
who
not the Mikael Arteta route. The Ole Gunnar Solskjaer route,
exactly.
I've slagged off all the way through, so I'm going to stand by that. But yeah, I know I hear exactly what you're saying, HG. So we don't want him. I think we're all pretty united on that. So it probably will be him. Scott Parker 4-1. Rich man's a rich man's Harry Winks turns in circles, but actually keeps the ball. What we saying about Scott? I mean, he's had a good season for Fulham, hasn't he? I mean, if they had such a bad start, I feel like they would have stayed up, but they're almost gone now, aren't they?
Yeah, I think they are almost gone. They're what 9 points behind
Mm,
now with what 4 games left. It's pretty
mm,
much over. Look, I think we've been saying that for a couple of months now, that they had a rough start and they've turned things around, but the results show that they haven't really. They just didn't get the results they needed 2 or 3 months ago when they were much closer. And in the last couple of weeks, now that Newcastle have got a couple of wins, Burnley have got a couple of wins, they're adrift. Parker's a weird one because obviously he was manager at the end of the season when Fulham were relegated. You can't blame him for that. He got them up at the first time of
he did.
asking. And if you look at that Fulham side, it really wasn't very good. So for him to do that, there is something in that. But
I loved him for us as well, HG. I've got to say, he was a loyal servant to the club. He's a hard worker. I think he'd give everything to the job. I genuinely do, and I think he'd be very popular with the fans. So I don't necessarily think it would be a terrible appointment, but it's not really. It's a big risk, isn't it? It's a hugely unproven track record. Even if he's won more silverware than Spurs have in the last 10 years, winning the playoff final, you get a nice trophy for that. He'd be massively unproven, wouldn't he?
Yeah, it would be a massive risk, and I don't know if the reputation is there behind it. Look, you're right. Everyone would want Scott Parker to do well because he comes across as like the person you'd want to have a drink with. There's no airs or graces about him. He understands the emotion involved in football, and I think we all like him. It's not just Spurs fans. I think a lot of people like him. He'd probably bring his
Yeah.
assistant with him, and his assistant obviously is Cliff Jones's grandson. So there are massive links with Spurs and Fulham, and there have been over the last few years. But it does feel like it's a job too early for him. You'd almost want him to go somewhere else and do quite well before going to Spurs. It would be a massive risk. I mean, certainly maybe not a massive risk, but it would be a risk because you don't know where it will go. Will we do well because we've got better players than Fulham? Maybe, but I think that Fulham's results don't match the players they have now. I think at the start of the season their players really weren't good enough, whereas now I think they do have a decent
Yeah.
15, 16 players to choose from, and they just haven't got the goals. I mean, that's the big thing for them this season. They
It might
haven't
be. It
scored
might
enough.
be as well that they come straight back up. I mean, if they go down now, they've got a very good quality side. I think they've improved that side enormously through the transfer windows, and I think
Yeah,
I
and
would.
and, and and they did it through loaning. I mean, this is
Yeah,
it. Like very few of those players signed permanent deals. A couple of them did, like Tosin did, and I think Anthony Robinson did. But when it comes to Joachim Anderson, well, he's only on loan. The fullback Aina was loaned with view to a permanent buy. You'd imagine they'd
there's an option there. I
pull,
think.
yeah, you'd imagine they'd pull the trigger, but maybe they won't. I don't know. But you'd imagine that a lot of those loans, like Ademola Lookman, actually came from Leipzig.
Hmm.
I don't know if there's an option on that one. So, like, if they keep most of that side together, which I think they could,
Well, Tony
then
Khan's
yeah,
got the money, hasn't he? Let's face it. He could turn, and he's very heavily invested in sports. So it wouldn't surprise me at all to see them pull the trigger on a few signings. He's going to want Premier League football, so I would imagine they'll bounce straight back up with that squad. I really would. And I think that probably is what Parker needs as well. He needs an outright championship win next. I think for me, Tottenham is
mhm.
too soon. Where do you stand if we got Ragnarok as a DOF and
Mhm.
Parker underneath him, which I've heard this week? HG, is that a tantalising proposition?
Yes and no. Like Scott Parker would not be a Ralph Rangnick coach, and I think that's the issue. So it might look great on paper, but I just don't see it happening. I think that again, like there is that kind of that English mentality. Maybe Scott Parker wouldn't necessarily want to work underneath someone. I think if Rangnick comes, everyone's going to know that he's kind of in charge of the club, and the coach is literally just the coach. He picks the team and he manages the team, but his job is to make the players better, is to basically instill the ideas that Rangnick has. And I don't think that would really suit Scott Parker. I think he's very much his own man. I mean, Parker played plenty of times for England, had a fantastic Premier League career. It would be very difficult for him, I think, to kind of cede that level of responsibility because he would think that he knows a lot already. So, like, yeah, I think Rangnick plus someone could work, but I don't think Parker would be it. I think Rangnick would want to bring in, one of his own trusted coaches, the people that have worked for him before.
Mm, like Hassan Hoodle, maybe. Little rabbit
Like
hutch
who?
man. Hassan Hoodle.
Yes, yeah, Rabbit Hutch, Mr. Hasenhüttl would be one of them. Yeah, I mean it's definitely possible. I don't know how well the two of them got on. I think maybe a few bridges were burned when Hasenhüttl quit. But yeah, it could be a good. We all know that Hasenhüttl likes to play that very Leipzig 4-2-2-2 system. He does enjoy that way of trying to play with a high press. I think Southampton, although their results have been pretty poor
Yeah.
in 2021, for
Players are
me, a lot
pretty
of
poor, though, aren't they? HG, we were talking about this. They've got two probably players that would get an hour 11, and we're not by any means of the of the stretch of the imagination, probably a top sort of 2-3 side right now. So he'd be working with better players at Spurs. I've got a soft spot for him. I think he's done generally a good job at Southampton. Generally, I mean they've had a couple of absolute thumpings in there, which does make you question mentality and leadership, but they've always bounced back from that as well, and the players seem to have a lot of loyalty to him as well. A lot of loyalty to him. So I don't know,
Yeah,
really.
I definitely think Hasenhüttl is a player's coach. But yeah, again, like if this conversation had been 6 months ago, a lot of us would be thinking, yeah, Hasenhüttl's the man, right? He's the next one in line because he plays that kind of high press style that I think Spurs. If only we want to see it because we knew it was successful before, so we're like, yeah, let's do that again.
And he's from Southampton.
And he's from Southampton, and he's obviously Austrian, so I have a link there. But yeah, I don't know. Again, I think that many Spurs fans now would say he's not very good because look at the results. I would say look at that squad and think that if Danny Ings isn't scoring and isn't fit, where are they going to get their goals from? Like Ward-Prowse scores free kicks and penalties, but outside of those two players, as you said, I think it's quite an ordinary squad. There's no one else there that I could see as being more than, I don't know, like a decent Premier League player.
Kevin
That's it.
Walker-Peters.
For example, a decent Premier League player, but nothing more than that. I
Yeah.
mean, like it's the same with Palace. Like Palace have a whole
Yeah,
bunch of
absolutely.
decent Premier League players,
But they've got
and
Eze and Zaha.
if those two aren't there, they'll lose. But if they are there, they've got a chance. I don't see much difference. So it's a tough one. It is a tough one because 4 months ago we'd have been all over Hasenhüttl because Southampton were doing well. I mean, they were top of the league around the same time we were. I mean,
Yeah,
so
they
they
were. Yeah,
were.
yeah.
But since then, they've been worse than Sheffield United, which is a massive red flag.
I
So
mean,
yeah, it
let's
would
be
be a
fair.
tough
Our
one.
form's about 18th as well, isn't it? For the last.
Yeah, I don't think it's weirdly enough. I don't think it's that bad. It just feels that bad
No, it is
because
that bad. Honestly, it really
really
is. I've seen a stat. I'm sure we're like. It might not be 18th. It might be like 16th, but it ain't good.
okay.
Since the turn of the year, since January. So I think we've only beaten like 3 teams.
Yeah, we've not won many. That is true. Yeah, I think 2021 has been very much a bad year for
Shit,
Spurs. Yeah.
shit. Would be the way I'd define it. If Brendan McGurty was here, he'd have an interesting swear word in Brazilian for it. So there you go. Or just pronounce it really differently and make it sound exotic, which is what his showpiece is. Right, going down my list, I've got Nuno Espirito Santo, which I know Brendan would pronounce again better than me.
Mhm.
He is now 7-1. What are your thoughts on him, HG? And I'll tell you mine because my dad's obviously a Wolves season ticket holder, so I have a little bit of insight here
Yeah,
because he watches them all the time. But what do you think?
yeah. You might know more than me. I mean, I just love his name
It's the surprise in your voice.
yeah, I mean, I love his name because it means Holy Spirit, and you're like, Santo Espirito Santo is kind of cool. He would get us access to Jorge Mendes's best clients, like he did when he was at Wolves to begin with. Outside of that, I don't know. Like
Yeah.
Wolves do play good football. They did certainly before this season, but is it him? Is it the players? That's I don't know. But yeah, go on. Tell us what you think, because you do have more insight into Wolves than I do.
Well, speaking to my dad, and he obviously watches every game that he can, and is a season ticket holder. He defines Wolves as very much a counter-attacking team. So Nuno's tactics are basically built around really solid foundation at the back, and then break really quickly. Which is kind of similar to what Jose just tried to do, isn't it? But failed miserably because there's no transition in our team, I think, is the biggest issue. The difference was, I think Nuno had that system over a long period of time and played 3 at the back, 2 wing backs, Doherty being one of them. They've also got Adama Traore, who obviously first half of the season he was crap. Second half of the season, apparently he's sort of shown his form again, but he's rumoured to be moving on in the summer, so available for about 30 million quid. I'd pop on that if I was us, quite frankly. But I think Nuno, if he's a defensive coach and he plays counter-attacking football, I don't necessarily want that at Spurs because I want to see possession-based high press football is what I prefer to see. That's easy on the eye because I go back to the early days of Poch, and I'm talking 2016, which was probably Pete Poch, and it was that high press. I remember someone saying, the translation I think was the team, they were like ravenous dogs. They just chased us for 90 minutes and were absolutely insatiable for the ball. That's what I enjoyed seeing at Spurs, and that's what I want to see again. I don't want to see a team sit deep, suck up loads of pressure, and then bang them on the counter.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the thing with Wolves is that I haven't seen as much of them this season, but when they sold Doherty, I think they made a decision to try and go to a 4-2-3-1 or a four three
Exactly what they've
three.
done, four at the back, and they haven't got the players to do. I mean, that's the other thing my dad said I should have said. They haven't got the players to do it, and I think it's Connor Cody. He's always on about him. He looked comfortable in a 5. He looks terrible in a 4, and that's it.
And that would make sense because Connor Cody was a midfielder originally.
Yeah,
So, like, if he's not a defender, then having two big lumps the either side of him, which is pretty much what Wolves did,
yeah.
it helped him. He used to spray the ball everywhere, and I mean that Wolves side. This is it. That Wolves side was good, but I think going from 3 at the back to 4 at the back was a mistake. And possibly if they did want to switch things, they could have gone more 3-5-2 as opposed to 3-4-3. Because, I think Daniel Podence is a good player. Pedro Neto's come in this season. He looks all right. Fabio Silva is only young, but I think there's clearly something there.
Yeah.
And maybe Nuno would do better next year with a bit more time on the training pitch and a proper pre-season, all the rest of it. But
I
yeah,
think they've had a
based
lot of
on
injuries this season. That's the other thing. I mean, talking to my dad, it's like a tale of woe.
yeah.
But he would tell you that Wolves, like, he by his own admission, Wolves' squad is very thin, so that's half the problem. So they've and Nuno likes it that way. He talks about it that way. He only wants a small squad, a really tight knit small squad. Lots of emphasis on team spirit. One of the things that made us successful once upon a time, and because of that, they've been ravaged by injury this year and just haven't been able to put a full strength side out pretty much all season, which obviously is going to impact you.
Look, I think the interesting thing, we talk about managers. When Wolves were doing really well, they finished, 7th for 2 years in a row. I don't think anyone looked at that Wolves team and thought it's the manager that's getting them there. I
I
think they
think
did focus
7th
on.
they finished because they declared themselves Premier. No, so you're right. Sorry, 7th because they declared themselves Premier League champions, didn't they? With the Big Six
Yeah.
not in there.
But yeah, it's a weird thing because we looked at Wolves' team and everyone thought Ruben Neves is great and Adama Traore is great and Raul was scoring goals left, right, and centre. Obviously, Jota went on to Liverpool, so they do have good players. But for whatever reason, it's changed this year. They spent a lot of money on the Barcelona right back. It's not really worked out for them. They've got a young kid at left back who has looked all right. So I think this year was almost a transition for them. And I think that next year they may well be better, but they need to get things figured out at the back because that's that they don't have a partnership. They need to play in a 3, and that's where the rest of the system goes. But Nuno, yeah, no.
Well, shout out to my dad, GC, as he's affectionately known by all the family, Jeff. I hope you're watching and having a nice time in Wales for my mum's birthday, which is today. So there you go. They're in Wales having a whale of a time in the wind and rain, probably, if I know Wales well. So that's Nuno. Right, next, Eric Ten Hag. Now, the guy's just signed a year-long extension. I'm going to come back to some of the comments we've had, HG, because we talked about it kind of in the preamble. Phil Ambrose says Ten Hag's contract extension was triggered by Ajax rather than him, wasn't it? And apologies if I say this wrong. Hibana Jaeger Main says, to be fair, the extension could just be to force a higher compensation fee if he leaves. My answer to all of that would be fine, but he's been photographed with putting pen to paper as an extension in Ajax, or he's certainly appeared like that on social media. So surely it's doubtful at this point that he's even in the running for the job. HG, what are we doing at 8-1?
Yeah, and that's the thing. I don't trust betting forums anyway because the whole thing is designed to get you to bet. It doesn't really mean if anyone's like just because someone's the favorite, it means usually that more people are betting as opposed to they actually have a good chance of becoming
Yeah.
the new manager. But with Ten Hag, look, I agree. Like even if it was Ajax that decided, yeah, we're gonna use that option and extend the deal by a year, that could like if Ten Hag really wanted out, I
He'd
think he would
come.
have gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so like that there were rumors. I know that Twitter's own favorite Fabrizio Romano said that Spurs did meet with Ten Hag, or his representatives, and there wasn't much common ground. I suspect that Ten Hag probably felt that he could make a few demands that maybe Spurs were unwilling to meet because Ten Hag is, I guess, he's the one in the position of power right now. He doesn't need to go anywhere. I think it's unlikely. I will say this: I watched a video about Eric Ten Hag. As most of you will know, I did live in Holland for a few years, and I speak the language. And I feel like
I've
I
been to
understand.
Amsterdam 3 times.
I feel like I understand the Dutch mentality pretty well. And there are Dutch people that are very, very conservative and cautious, and there are others like the ones you would have visited in Amsterdam who are not like that. To me, Ten Hag is from the countryside of Holland. It's a relatively conservative place. He's not the bubbly, kind of ha-ha type that Martin Jol was. He's very much a serious person. He talked about how his family still live in the countryside, even though he works in Amsterdam. Those things are red flags to me. He came across to me as being quite boring, and I understand that, like, Keith Birkinshaw wasn't exactly Mr. Excitement, and he did really well for Spurs. But I think it matters these days much more than it did 30 years ago, 35 years ago, and players have to rally behind someone. And I just didn't get that impression from Ten Hag. He seems a very passive, almost quite insipid, which is really harsh because I don't know him at all. But that one video, I felt like I was bored. Right, I was bored watching him talk about his favorite moments in football. And if you ask me about my favorite moments in football, like I'm passionate about it because there's such good memories that I want people to try and understand how important they are to me. And it's not just, well, yes, it was a very good night and it means a lot to me, and because that's how it felt. So
Yeah.
Ten Hag's not coming to Spurs. I don't think it would have been a great fit anyway. But yeah, I think we can just forget Eric Ten Hag and hope that Ajax, crash and burn because of it.
Let's hope we draw them in the Europa League next season, and when they get
Well,
knocked out of the Champions League, which is inevitable, and then we stuff them. Right, a favourite of mine, and I wouldn't be upset if this guy gets the Spurs job. I genuinely wouldn't, because he's relative, he's magic. Graham Potter.
all right, so here's a question for you, caller. If you had to choose between Graham Potter and Scott Parker, who would you pick?
Graham Potter, every day of the week.
Why and why is that?
Because I believe that Brighton play a more attractive style of football. And if you look at the statistics, that backs that up in terms of that good old stat that I don't like very much, XG. Brighton far higher than their league position dictates. They've looked good every time I've seen them play. Like, they can't finish for Toffee. They really can't. Like, in terms of actually sticking the ball in the back of the net, not at all. But we've got Son, Kane, possibly Bale for another season. And that great Brazilian legend Vinicius. So I would say that we've got better players than Brighton. I think that's probably quite fair. I think he would be a good coach. I think he's quite motivational. I think he's English, which makes a nice change. It'd be nice to see an English manager get one of the so-called top jobs, and I'd be on the Potter train. I've got to be honest. I'd be on Hogwarts and on my way to wherever it takes us. It might be a complete disaster. Don't get me wrong, but when I look at the other names on the list, there isn't anyone there. I mean, I'd like Brendan Rodgers, if I'm honest. It'll upset you, but I'd like Brendan Rodgers because I think actually his track record is pretty decent. And I think we have got a decent squad. I think it's a lot better than people are giving it credit for right now. I think it's been very mismanaged, and I think he would get a lot more out of the players than some of the other coaches. But equally, I think Graham Potter could galvanise the squad. The truth is, there's a couple of things. I think Potter will get more out of the side. Rodgers would get more out of the side. Even Scott Parker potentially would get more out of the side. But unless we put some pen to paper and shift some deadwood on and sign some new players, then we're still going to be in the same position next season. But that's digressing completely. Potter, what's your view on him?
I think if Graham Potter had Scott Parker's side parting, everyone would love him. I think,
He looks like a school kid. That's the problem with Graham Potter, right?
yeah, I mean, there is an image issue. Graham Potter is very much, I want to be a coach. I'm not worried about image. I'm not worried about how I come across. Like my job is to make the football players better, to make the team better. And although the results haven't really come through for them this year, I think we all think that Brighton are a better team than they were under Houghton.
Yeah,
We all love Chrissy Houghton, but that Brighton made the decision a couple of years ago to get rid of him and to try and be a bit more progressive and not just exist in the Premier League, but to actually try and go a bit further up. And
absolutely.
Potter, and I think Potter, as you said, like those underlying stats, it's not even about the
I mean,
chances you
look at that
create.
face. What's that all about?
If you look at the chances they create, they don't create many fantastic ones, but crucially, they don't allow the opposition those either.
Yeah,
So we talk about, their XG is quite good. The important thing is that their attacking XG is better than their defensive one, right? They are very good at stopping opponents from getting good chances. I think they've conceded a whole load of penalties this season as well, which has made things even worse for them. If you took the penalties away, or even took half of them away, that they look even better. But it is tough because I don't think we look at Graham Potter and think he's going to inspire many people. He's probably very much a Keith Birkinshaw type of, a dour Midlander in his case.
I think he
And
would
so
inspire people. I think when you listen to him talk, he's a lot more positive than maybe you're giving him credit for there. I think he's not.
I think the interesting thing for me is that, obviously he went to Swedish football, right?
That is interesting. So he was there for a long time. I didn't realise he was there for 7 years.
Exactly. He was there for a long time and he took them up a couple of divisions and
Yeah,
got them into the Europa League where they played Arsenal, I think, one
yeah,
time. I think
yeah.
they even
So,
beat Arsenal at Arsenal.
I mean,
Um,
everyone does that these days, but that's a side.
well, yes, but maybe it was a bit more difficult then. It's. I think that if we knew a manager in England that had done that, had gone up a couple of divisions with the same club. I mean, like Chris Wilder, for example, almost, and Sheffield United almost got into Europe. But you've got that idea where if someone does that in the UK, playing good football, you'd like to think that, I mean, it's weird. If they were from the south, they'd probably get a lot of good press. The issue in England is that Sean Dyche is a Midlander, and Chris Wilder is a Northerner, and Graham Potter is also, I think, Nuneaton or Birmingham area. Um,
None eaten, Christ.
yeah, it's I don't know. It's a strange one. Like I think if you were going to look at statistics, Graham Potter would be a very, very sound choice. Absolutely. But like as we all know, the very vocal Spurs fans out there, they don't want Graham Potter. They see this boring manager who's got his team fighting relegation for the last 2 seasons. They think he spent a lot of money on players when he hasn't really. He brought Welbeck in on a free. He got Lallana in on a free. He's tried to strengthen the squad. He got obviously the Chelsea right back Lamptey for very little money because he's like, I'm going to give them a chance to play. I think there's lots to admire about Graham Potter. I really do. I don't know. Again, it's like Potter or
He's
Parker.
not a
What
sexy
more of them?
appointment, is he? He's not a sexy appointment.
No.
But the problem is when I look down this list, who is a sexy appointment?
Yeah.
There's not really that many exciting people. I mean, we're going to talk about Maurizio Sarri next. I mean, for crying out loud, you know, we're talking about. So Potter, people who are watching tonight, please, absolutely, let me know what you think in the comment box right now. We'll get to you on the air now, and we're going to come to some of your comments in just a moment. And please do subscribe to our YouTube channel if you're not already, because you will then not miss out on amazing. I mean, obviously we couldn't market this one because of the social media blackout, but if you subscribe, you'll get a notification every time we go live. So please do that, and it really helps the pod out. So thank you very much. Let's have a look at what some people are saying. Okay. Spurs TM says Spurs are equally reliant on Kane and Son as Southampton is on Ings and JWP, James Ward-Prowse. So Husenhuttl is very familiar with two core scorers, maybe not a bad choice. Why is it when I say Husenhuttl sounds like I'm from Middlesbrough or something? Yeah, fair point. George says Roberto De Zerabi, Salusa. We wouldn't go for him anyway. Well, I don't know who he is, so that doesn't help me. You heard of that name?
You don't follow Italian football, caller?
Not really. I'm British. I follow English football, and that's it. I don't have time. Listen, I'm
I tell
not
you
a
what,
teacher in Austria. I don't have like 72 hours a week to watch other football. I do not have the time.
it's interesting because there'll be lots of Spurs fans who will suddenly be experts on Italian football today because Christian Eriksen scored for Inter Milan, and Inter Milan are basically certainties to win Serie A, and so they'll all be out on Twitter going crazy about how Levy let him go for peanuts and we've not replaced him, and even though they spent 18 months slagging him off before he left,
And didn't want him back.
yeah, exactly. So it's tough. Like I'll be honest, was it TM? No, someone George talked about Roberto De
George. Yeah, I'll
Zerbi.
bring it up again. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know a great deal about him either. Like I know Sassuolo are not a big Italian side, and they've held their own in Serie A, and they've done really well to do that. So if he's the main reason why they've stayed up, then yeah, there's obviously something to it. I don't know the type of football they play either, sadly, but you would like to think that if it's progressive attacking football, then it'd be a good choice. Certainly better than the picture that George had, which was the Hamburg flag, and we don't want him to be like Hamburg. So let's hope De Zerbi's a bit better than that. But yeah, like, do I think Daniel Levy's looking at Italian football? No, I don't. I think that Daniel Levy is looking at English football or looking at the football he sees on TV. So maybe Europa League, probably Champions League, but anything outside of England when it comes to managers that aren't in Europe, I don't think he knows. I mean, I know who De Zerbi is, and I doubt he would. I think he knows even less than I do.
I mean, you think most people know less than you do, but that's another thing.
Yeah, I do. I'm always surprised. I mean, not just when it comes to football either. I can say that. I can say that with enough arrogance. But I just like obviously Daniel Levy's a very, very busy man. So why would he have time to do these things? But you would think that he'd have someone in his ear whose opinion he does respect. And sadly, that might well be Steve Hitchen. And I don't think anyone really has much respect for that opinion.
No.
So it's tough because I mean, even when we signed, I think it was Redknapp. When we sacked Ramos and appointed Redknapp, Daniel Levy had a guy on the board, I think called Paul Kemsley, who looked like your basic, he didn't look like someone I would want to listen to, but he obviously listened to Kemsley, and Redknapp did quite well. There's no doubt about it. So I would hope that Levy looks at previous appointments and sees what kind of held them together. What made Redknapp work? What made Pochettino work? What made Martin Jol work? Right? What did those three have in common? That because they were the three that took Spurs to different levels. Jol got us into Europe regularly. We hadn't done that. And then Redknapp got us into the Champions League for the first time. We'd not done that. And then Pochettino got us there 4 years in a row. What is it that those three had that made things work? And because I don't think it was the same thing. I think Martin Jol had a really good connection with the players. I think that Redknapp was very much, he understood the kind of team that was needed. He wasn't a tactician, but he understood what worked.
Motivator. He's a motivator, Harry. He makes people feel good around him, and I think that does carry a lot.
Yeah, and he plays with two wingers and big man, little man. Like he's very very much a 4-4-2. I mean, even if it was 4-2-3-1 or 4-4-1-1 with Van der Vaart as the number 10, it's still very much a 4-4-2. Really. It's just that Van der Vaart would drop deep. So, like, whatever it is those managers had,
just on that, I'd have loved to see Harry give him to the end of the season with the players rather than Ryan Mason. I mean, we've appointed the under-18 academy coach. Harry sat there doing, I'm a celebrity, like autograph signing sessions. Could we not have just brought him in for a few? I'd have loved that just for shits and giggles, really.
But you have to imagine, as far as I'm concerned, Ryan Mason is just for PR, right? Like he's a Spurs boy through and through. It makes more sense to make him the manager. from that respect than Chris Powell, who has actually had
Yeah.
experience of senior football management. To me, Chris Powell is almost certainly the one who's let's say making the decisions, but he's the one with the experience. But it looks better, I think, to put Ryan Mason in charge than to put Chris Powell in charge. That's the only reason I can think of. I don't think it was the right decision, but I definitely think it looked better. I think the fans were, more willing to get behind someone that they identified with, and Chris Powell, although he's a Spurs fan from birth, he's just not associated with Spurs, and that's what it comes down to. Ryan Mason is associated with Spurs. Ledley King obviously is as well, but
Chris Powell,
Ledley King,
Charlton, isn't he?
Chris Powell played for Southend and managed at Charlton, and I think at Southend as well. But yeah, I mean, Chris Powell was a very good lower league player and
I mean,
he
my
did
dad was
pretty
a Charlton
well.
fan before he was a Wolves fan. Fickle.
So yeah, like it's tough, but yeah, I mean, Ryan Mason's obviously he's going to get 5 games from now on. Let's hope it's only those 5. Like the thing is, even if we won all 5 games, which I don't think we will, but even if we did, I still want someone else in.
Yeah, absolutely. The
Ryan,
danger is if we win those 5 games, the bandwagon starts rolling Mason's way, if we haven't
yeah,
appointed someone, that is.
and I wouldn't doubt that the press would be behind it. They all want to see a young Englishman do well. That they do interviews on Talksport, and they'd be all upset that some unproven foreigner would get the gig ahead of him after all he's done for the club. They did the same with Sherwood.
Yeah.
Right? They were so unhappy that Sherwood lost out and that Pochettino took over. They were proven wrong, but they won't care. Like that's just that's how they work. So
Anything sensationalist will be fine. Right, let's get to some more of these comments. Lindy Millard, believe you might know that person, HG, says, surely Spurs have tried the sexy appointment. That was Jose. Well, you're entitled to your opinion, Lindy. I don't find him attractive at all. And also, any manager who takes a job needs to have guaranteed money from Levy to get good players in. And Spurs needs a manager who accompanies us all the traits you're talking about. With only one of those is no good. And I think in terms of Harry Redknapp, you never go back to somewhere where you previously worked. Well, look, I get all that argument, but I suppose I'm just an old romantic and would love to see Harry sort of giving it some on the touchline.
You may as well want Hoddle back.
No, because I don't believe Hoddle did a good job, and I believe that I was gutted when Harry Redknapp went. I really was gutted, but he flirted a little bit too much with the England job for Levy's liking. I think that was the reality.
Just a little bit, yeah. Just a little bit.
I mean that I'm being generous, but there's something just very likable about Harry Redknapp. He's a bit like Terry Venables in that respect. He's a bit of a Del Boy. He's like got lots of dodgy business deals on the side, but he is a great man manager, and I do miss him. And yes, we have tried, Lindy. We have absolutely tried the sexy appointment. That was probably Jose. He's very attractive to lots of women, and absolutely women of a certain age, even more so.
I'm not sure that's what she means when she says sexy.
I know, I'm being tongue in cheek.
To defend her on her a little bit. I don't think that Jose Mourinho is her type. I'm sure she'll tell me otherwise, but yeah.
Well, I think the thing is with Jose, he was. I think the pandemic caught it up. If I'm being really honest, I think the pandemic has absolutely shafted that move, and I think that's what, if you look at the press statement, relates to in terms of it not working out. I think there was probably going to be more money available for players had that pandemic not have happened, and it's not, and obviously now they're very limited within a budget. And Jose ain't the man for that job, is he?
It's funny. Like I read something in the week. We know how Daniel Levy likes to pay for players by installments, right? You're going to hire purchase nonsense.
Well, they all do that. First of all, they all do that to a degree.
Yeah, exactly. They all do that. But this is the point. It's like, but because he's done that, all that money we spent in the summer of 2019 on Sessegnon and Ndombele and Lo Celso, that means a lot of that still has to be paid. So the idea that we've got another bunch of money that we could spend, I'm not sure that's going to be true, because we pay things out over the length of the contract. Doherty wasn't much, Højbjerg wasn't much, but still, if there's money left over, that money might come back if fans are allowed back in next season. But there's no guarantee of that. So it would take a brave chairman to spend even 50 million over the summer, thinking that you're going to have full stadiums or 2/3 full or whatever starting in August. It's a tough call. I definitely feel that there are some players that we can move on for a bit of money, but I don't think there's going to be a massive amount for anyone new to come in and spend. Certainly not the amounts that we might have wanted or we might have expected to see 2 years ago or 18 months ago before the pandemic hit.
I mean, there is all of that, but then we've got some serious asset value if we sell a few players, and particularly Son, Kane. Those all. There is money in the squad to move on it. And the other
But
thing
you've
I
got,
would
but then
say
the thing
is,
is, then you have to replace them. Like
you,
Kane, especially. Like
I
Kane,
agree.
Kane,
I agree.
Kane could bring
Kane's
a lot
not
of money.
moving. Kane's not
Right.
moving. I'm thinking more Son, if I'm honest. But I also think that we have to look at the cash in the bank, and Spurs have got over 250 million quid sat in their current account due to
Mhm.
a government loan of 190 million, 175 million, was it? So we're not short of a few bob, I suppose, is the point. If we wanted to pay that straight out, we could. And don't be surprised if a lot of it is performance linked, is the other thing that I would say, and that's like the max exposure that it could be,
Yeah.
because Levy is no fool over transfers. He never has been, and I doubt he will. But I completely take your point. We have got money to come out of the club for
I
transfers.
I think there's the simple rule when it comes to the reporting of transfer fees is that when you sell, they report the lowest figure possible, almost the guaranteed money, and when you buy, they report the fee with all
Nice.
the add-ons included, right? And so yeah,
Because it
like
sounds it sounds exciting. That's why
yeah, exactly.
to capitalist
It
pigs.
centralization and sensationalism. I think it's yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's just it. I'd love to think that we have a bit of money going around. I don't think that we should perhaps use that 175 million loan because I'm not sure we're allowed to use it for those things. Although, how could they really know? It's again, it's about using it wisely. I mean, like anyone with money this summer will be in a better position. If you've got even a little bit spare, you'll be in a better position than those who don't. There are clubs within Europe who have to sell to balance the books. Spurs aren't in a position that
No,
we don't have to sell
we've
anyone
got
to
loads of
balance the
money. We've
books.
got loads of money.
Well, I mean, it's not even about having loads of money. It's just the idea that
Don't
our
forget,
way.
HG. They've told the season ticket holders they've got to pay up in full by June 3rd,
Oh,
or we lose
really?
our season tickets. So they're going to get quite a few million from that, because my season ticket's like 1,300 quid straight away. So
Yeah,
if they're getting 1,300 quid from 42,000 people, that's
it's a
some
fair chunk
serious
of money.
dollar right there up front. So and then whether we have to like get credit back because they're not allowed full, but they are actually demanding the full money up front this
Wow,
season. So rightly
it's
or
an
wrongly,
interesting.
they're gonna have money swell the coffers, because they will claim. And you think of what the corporate side of that's worth.
Mhm. Yeah, and you have to understand that obviously, like the players that we've brought in on loan, obviously Bale's wages we won't be paying. Danny Rose will go. A couple of also other players will go, so that will free up a bit more money. But we're coming back to the idea of like who's going to is the new manager going to be in charge of spending that,
Mm.
or is it going to be a committee decision with Hitchin and Levy involved? Because
I
like
think it
again,
always will be. I think it
yeah,
always
well,
will
that's
be.
just it. And if I'm a manager and that's the situation, where do you go? Would I trust their track record in the last few years? I wouldn't. Like you'd be going into a job where you know that you've got decent tools, but they're kind of dusty and they don't know how to be worked. You don't know how to work them particularly well, and then you might get new ones in, but you won't decide the ones you get. So you might get a second hammer when you actually don't want a hammer, you want a chisel.
Yeah.
Like it's going to be a rough call because whatever comes down to it, Levy is going to have to cede some control to get someone in. Like obviously before when we had directors of football, pretty much it was whatever you bring in, you can spend. Right,
Yeah.
we saw that with Bale. Right, we brought in a lot of money, or in other words, whatever money I bring in because I do the negotiations, you can spend through my negotiations. That is going to be the Levy's way for a very long time. There's no way around that. But I just think that this summer is the worst time to sell an asset. I would much rather keep Son for a year. I would much
I
rather
think
keep
they
Kane
will.
for a year.
I genuinely think they will. Son's the only one I think might go, but
Yeah.
I have a hunch he'll sign an extension, if I'm being really honest, because
If I never thought Toby would. if I'm honest. And then obviously we signed Mourinho, and I think Toby thought, well, this is the place to be. And maybe at that time there weren't too many offers for Toby, right? So he decided to take the money while it was on offer, as opposed to wait for a transfer period that probably
And
wouldn't have
then
happened
declare his
with
undying
COVID.
love for the club, and he's never wanted to leave.
Yeah, which obviously we all know is garbage. But like Toby will do what's best for Toby, as will any player, right? I don't blame them in that respect at all. But it's going to be an interesting summer, and we need to get that manager sorted. Whether it's Rangnick or someone who we haven't even talked about, we need to
Well,
make
I'm
that
coming on.
decision
There's a couple
soon.
more. There's a couple more. So let's
Go
let's
on.
part, hold that thought. So I want to try and get through some more of these comments as well. So Chip Kapolsky says I'd take Potter over most on this list. Thank you, Chip. You agree with me? That's good. And Kai says, what about Gasparini from Atalanta or
Atalanta, yeah.
Gerard? I mean,
That's true.
Gerard's the one that's not mentioned on this list.
It's funny. Like if Steven Gerrard had done what he's done at an English Premier League club, Spurs would be all over him,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think the reason that we're not is because deep down everybody knows that Steven Gerrard will take over from Jurgen Klopp whenever Klopp gets bored with Liverpool, which, if rumours are to be believed,
I
might
mean,
even be this summer, right? I mean, there's enough rumours going around Germany that Klopp might have, kind of had enough. Obviously, he was in England when his mum died a few months ago. That would have played a part. Maybe he just wants to go home and take a year off or whatever. But there's quite a lot of talk in Germany that Klopp might leave Liverpool in the summer. If he does, Gerrard will almost certainly go there. But the thing with Gerrard is that if managing Liverpool is his goal, and he's going to need a stepping stone job between Rangers and Liverpool, I don't think Spurs would be it. I think it would be someone like a Southampton or a Newcastle, someone where the expectations are a bit higher, but leaving them to go to Liverpool would be seen as an obvious move. I
yeah,
don't think Spurs should see themselves as being a stepping stone to Liverpool. I don't. Whether it's players or
great.
managers or whatever, I don't think because like if we position ourselves as that,
Well, we're as big
then
a club as Liverpool. On financial paper, we're nearly as big a club as Liverpool in terms of revenue. In terms of stadium, we're a bigger club than Liverpool. In terms of the training ground, which everyone will take the piss out of me for, we are a bigger club than Liverpool. And heritage, we're not, obviously,
yeah,
because we've
and
not got the
Liverpool
trophy count. But
yeah, and right now Liverpool are far more successful. I mean,
yeah,
there's no doubt about it. I just think that like if Spurs want to see themselves as this big club, I mean, we've got our revenue up to be where we can consider ourselves to be a big club. All those people that were upset that Spurs got invited to the European Super League, it wasn't because of trophies. Man United weren't chosen because of trophies. None of those teams were chosen
revenue,
because of trophies.
revenue, revenue.
Exactly. They were just chosen for money, and Spurs are there. When it comes to money, they're there. It's just a question of then building to break through whatever the next glass ceiling is, which is probably going to be trophies. Um, but yeah, I just don't think that like Steven Gerrard to Spurs would make a lot of sense if he didn't have that Liverpool background, but he does, and I just think that Liverpool is going to be the end destination, and I would like to have a situation where Spurs are seen as that by someone, right? Even though we know that, like when Pochettino was doing really well, and he might go to Real Madrid or he might go somewhere else. We understand that we're not going to be at that level. But when it comes to English football, I don't want us to be seen as a stepping stone anymore. I want us to do what we did with Højbjerg. Højbjerg signed a 5-year deal with us. He's going to have the prime of his career with Spurs. That's what we need to be doing. We don't want to be a retirement home, and we don't want to be a place for young players to maybe get games. We have to kind of combine all three. We've done the retirement home in the early 2000s. We've done the young players place. That worked really well for us. But at some point, as all Spurs fans will know, we want to get players in the prime of their career at Spurs doing what they have proven to be able to do in other places. And that means we have to become a final destination, and it will take time for us to do that. But I think if we allow ourselves to be that stepping stone, it will just take longer to be that destination. We have to view ourselves as that.
Um. Okay. One more manager. One more manager. One more manager, and then we're just going to briefly talk Sheffield United.
All right, go
Um.
on. Say Oliver Glasner, please.
Well, there is a comment about Oliver Glasner, but I wasn't going to say him. Do you want to give me your impression on Oliver Glasner very quickly?
Oliver Glasner is the antithesis of Jurgen Klopp, right? Jurgen Klopp is your big German blonde smiley face
Ha!
cheerleader,
It's great.
which a
Yeah.
lot of people hate about him, but that's what he is. Oliver Glasner is not German; he's Austrian, but still he's opposite. He's very methodical, very pragmatic, quite dour in how he looks. He's not interested in image. Like he's a coach first and foremost. He was in Austrian football. Actually started at Salzburg, so Rangnick will know him, will know Glasner. Glasner then went to Lask for a couple of years, got Lask promoted to the top division, got them into European football. And like Linz is a big city in Austria, but their football team has been nothing for most of my time here. It's actually quite weird to see Lask doing as well as they are doing. On the back of that, he got poached by Wolfsburg, and he's been there for a couple of seasons. And right now, they're in a Champions League spot in Germany. They're doing very well. They hadn't lost many games until the last few weeks. They've had a bit of a wobble recently, but it's a team of nobodies, really. Like most of those Wolfsburg players, people won't have heard of,
But
but he's
why
got
not
them.
him?
Well, that's just it. I think that, like, if you said to me Rangnick was director of football and Glasner came in to be the coach, to me that would work. Um, that's what I would, I guess, I don't want to say I would like, but I think that would function really, really well. But again, most people in England have no idea who Oliver Glasner is.
No.
They'll look at his European record and think he got knocked out in the Europa League playoffs by, I think it was a Greek side. They were out after one game. That's going to be a concern for lots of people. But if you look at the type of what they've done this season in the Bundesliga, that their team really is full of no ones. They've got a French centre half who they signed for €5 million last summer, and he's one of their better players. I mean, real find from French football. You look at that and you think, why can't we do that? Right?
Mm.
Why €1 million on Roden when we could spend €5 million on a guy who's younger and actually looks better? I mean, that from looking at Wolfsburg, they're a defensively solid side. They work as a team. They play good football. They're not counter-attacking. They defend as a team and they attack as a team. And there's a lot about Glasner that I like, despite the fact that he looks very, very dour, almost like as if he's got a wig. His hair's all a bit weird. But yeah, Oliver Glasner is a very unsexy appointment, but may well be a good one for Spurs.
Right. I want to talk Sheffield United very briefly, and we are running away with time. So it's almost as if you could talk really well. That's a joke.
I do like talking. It's true.
Maurizio Sarri, yes or no?
No, I'm not. Like, I don't like smoking. I don't like chain smokers. No, like I mean, he did really well with Napoli. There's no doubt about that. His Chelsea side weren't terrible, but I don't like Sarri ball. He's going to want to sign Jorginho, and who's the closest thing to Jorginho that we have? Harry Winks. So
No,
no.
no from me. No from me. Your cams also slowed down again. Can I ask you to just rejoin quickly while I talk through
Sure.
these loads?
Yeah.
Technical issues. These are the joys of running a YouTube live show. While he's gone, Ryan Mason, the last person on the list. I mean, is that barely worth talking about? No, of course it's not. Right, looking ahead, HG, you're
Okay.
back. You're perfect now. Looking ahead, Sheffield United.
I didn't catch that. Could you try again?
No, I can't. No. Looking ahead, we've got Sheffield United, obviously tomorrow. What are you thinking?
I'm thinking that it will be quite a boring game, but that we'll probably win.
Prediction?
2-1. Like I'm not confident about us keeping a clean sheet ever. I know that Sheffield United really can't score. I mean, they've got 18 goals all season. That's not a lot, but they scored against us in the when we played them in Sheffield. They could do it again, but yeah, like I think we'll win. We've definitely got better players than them. If we get our team playing with any kind of attacking freedom, we should beat them. I do think that. So yeah, we'll win.
And I covered this on the pod, but McGoldrick, the danger man, do you think?
Yeah, because no one really knows who they're going to play up top. He scored in their last game, so you'd like to think that he'd keep his position in the side. That Sheffield United team last year were clearly overperforming. There's no one in that where you think in that 11 where you think, okay, this person's maybe even good enough to stay in the Premier League. Like the Norwegian guy, Sander Berger, might stay, but there's a whole load of them who will go down with Sheffield United and may stay there. So yeah, it won't be easy because they do fight for each other, and it's important for them to keep some kind of pride before the end of the season. But for Spurs, again, the game is all about us. Like Spurs need to go out there and really try to win the game and do it comfortably for a bit of confidence. If it's a lucky 1-0 win or a bit of a fluke, it won't help anyone. Despite getting 3 points, it won't help. We need to get some confidence and we need to play attacking football. And that means to me, 4-2-3-1, 4-4-2, but more 4-2-4 if we just want to go for it. That's what I would like to see. It's a Sunday night. No one's going to be watching Line of Duty, so we'll just watch the.
HG, I've got news for you. People are going to be watching Line of Duty, and you know why? It's the season finale.
Yeah. No, I was aware. I did watch the first season in full, so I'm catching up a little bit. But
Have you caught? I was wondering if you were going to get pop on this.
like I'm not from the first season. I'm not a massive fan, if I'm honest. It's all right. It's a bit unbelievable for me, but
it's totally unbelievable. Yeah.
I'll keep going. I like things that are somewhat believable. You may as well just make it all about robots if it's not believable, and it's not. It's about humans. But yeah, it's all right. But yeah, I won't be watching Line of Duty series finale. I'll be watching the Spurs because that's where my heart is.
Well, I'm hoping to host a post-match show, but if it clashes with Line of Duty, I keep calling it Call of Duty. That's the computer game. I like that as well. If it clashes with Line of Duty, then there's going to be a big fat problem there. Ultimately, Line of Duty is probably going to win over Sheffield United. If I'm really honest.
Maybe do a watch along of Line of Duty.
I tell you what, I reckon I could get more viewers for a pod of Line of Duty talking about the Line of Duty show than I can for a Spurs one these days, because with that, there's a lack of entertainment there. HG, thanks very much for joining me. I'm going to ask you to finish by summarising who you think, not what you want, but who you think is going to be the next Spurs boss and your prediction for the Sheffield United game. Go for it.
Well, the prediction's the easier one of the two, so I'll start with that. I think we'll win. I did say 2-1 a few seconds ago. I'll stick with that. Maybe 2-0, but yeah, let's go with 2-1. Spurs 2, Sheffield United 1. When it comes to manager, I genuinely don't know. I genuinely have no idea. I would like to think it's going to be Rangnick. I would like to think that Rangnick will come in and be the manager and then show Levy that he does know what he's doing and take over as maybe director of football afterwards. But of all the options, Rangnick is still the one I'd like to see because of the way of the football he likes to play. Wait, I know you asked me who I think it will be. I think, oh my gosh, it'll be someone who has experience of managing in England. That's what I think. Whether it's Roberto Martinez, I see that as being more.
Martinez isn't even in the list.
I know, but I look. Can I keep a name away? I just think that it's going to be someone who's had experience of the English Premier League, and if Brendan Rodgers changes his mind or can be convinced, that's probably what's going to happen. But the last time I was asked this on a pod, when the whole Super League thing was going on, I said Nagelsmann. Obviously, that wasn't going to happen, or it won't happen now. So, yeah, it's a tough one, but. Yeah, someone with experience of English football. I think Scott Parker is probably the most likely right now.
Well, I'm going to say we're going to win 4-0 against Sheffield United because I live in optimism. And I also recall that Ndombele's wonder goal was scored against Sheffield United, and he meant it, by the way, Franco, if you're watching.
Oh, he did mean it. Absolutely, he meant it.
I think the next manager, is going to be Brian Potter.
Brian?
Yeah,
Brian Potter?
Brian Potter.
Who's Brian Potter? Graham Potter.
No, Graham Potter's the Brighton manager. Brian Potter's the guy at Phoenix Knights. Absolutely, Potter's going to get it. A Potter will get the job. Absolutely. Look, Cheeseheads, thanks very much for watching. Please do subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already, and we will be back post-match tomorrow at some point, depending on line of duty, because we know there's no point putting out a live broadcast when literally most of the country is going to be glued to find out who H actually is. So thanks very much for watching. It's been an absolute pleasure to discuss who's going to be our next manager with you, HG, and look ahead to tomorrow's fixture.
Yeah, we'll do this again in 2 more weeks when we still won't have a manager, but hopefully the names will have been narrowed down a little bit. We'll have 3 or 4 new names that we've never heard of.
I'm thinking we'll just do it every day until we get a new manager. I think that's the way to go. Look,
it was good fun, and obviously there is only one H, and that is me, HG. This other H.
I did see that comment and laughed. Oh no, it's my sister. My sister's name's Helen, so she was like, we all know who H is around here. But there you go. Look, guys, thanks for watching, and see you next time. Come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.